first Iraq vet, the first OIF vet elected to Congress. That's pretty much all I think I need to say. Patrick Murphy has been involved with us for a while, although this is the first time I've actually spoken with him face to face. When I started this organization a few years ago, one of the reasons was I felt that Congress needed more folks who could work across the aisle, and that military service is one of the few things left in Washington that can trump partisanship. And I remember somebody told me, you know, that's decades ago. That doesn't happen anymore. The stories of Senator Stevens and Senator Inouye, you know, getting together for a beer and you know, that sort of thing, that doesn't happen anymore. And then we had a speaker at one of our workshops named Congressman Tom Rooney. He's a Republican from Florida. And he talked about how he and his good friend, who we taught at West Point together with, Patrick Murphy, helped each other get elected. And I began to think, you know, there really is something to this. There really is something to this military service we've all had that rises above the level of partisanship. Congressman Murphy has not only was the first OIF vet elected to Congress, he also was the leader behind ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell, a historic bill, however you feel about it. And he just, well, I'll let him tell the story about Tom Rooney afterwards, but it's an absolute honor to have him here tonight and speak to you. Thank you very much, Congressman.
Well, thanks, everybody. I'm going to do a little Oprah Winfrey and not stand behind the podium. That's okay. And y'all can see me. And thanks, everybody, for being here. So, Seth, thank you for that introduction. And thanks for your great leadership. It's just critically important. And Tom Rooney is my buddy. And if you don't know the story, a couple of things. One, I joined the Army when I was 19. I did ROTC at a small Catholic college called King's College. It's in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And I got my commission as an Army officer, eventually went to law school and went back in the Army JAG Corps. And the Army JAG school is at University of Virginia Law School in Charlottesville. Well, out of 88 classmates, only 5 of us had served, and so it's really a gentleman's course for the direct commissionees to come into the JAG Corps. Well, one of the guys was my classmates who had to teach how to march and fire an M16-84 assault rifle was Tom Rooney. And so the first day, it's PT, and we're on our PT uniforms. It's like dark 30. It's like 5:30, and we're there a little early. And this guy's there, and I see he had his name tape on his thing. And it said Rooney, and he's drinking out of a Steelers mug. And I say, "Hey Rooney," I said, "Patrick Murphy." And I'm like, "Any relation to the Steelers?" I'm being a wise ass a little bit. And he goes, "Yeah, actually, my family owns a team." I'm like, "No shit." I said, "I was an Eagles security guard for the Philadelphia Eagles, the old veteran." I said, "We're going to get along great." So we both went on to be prosecutors. We've been taught at West Point years later, teaching constitutional law and law board for commanders. And we were there when 9/11 happened. And then I left to play with General Petraeus to Bosnia, came back, was reassigned to the 82nd Airborne Division, and was part of the invasion force in Iraq in 03 and 04. And we all shared the military experience. I'm not going to bore you with mine because your military careers were probably 10 times better than mine, and I can't compete there. But I will say that public service comes in many different forms, and you know that. But pure public service is what we all learned in the military, and what's ingrained in our hearts and our souls. That pure public service. You know, when I taught at West Point, I didn't go there as I mentioned, but I did teach there. The mission statement for West Point is to develop leaders of character for a lifetime of service. Now, my friend Kelly Stoner's over there. She's a Navy vet. She doesn't like, she went to Villanova ROTC. We keep doing Army, Navy, back and forth. Of course, they kicked our ass the last few years, which unfortunately in the Army, Navy game, but this year is a different year, and it'll work out hopefully differently. But I will say that pure public service is what's missing in Washington, what is missing in Washington. And why I'm hoping a lot of you step up to the plate and either run or get actively engaged and be the person that is chief of staff, legislative directors, etc. Because we need you. Our country needs you. And I will say, and Seth mentioned it, but when Tom Rooney, I came back from Iraq, he said, "Hey, we used to talk when we were at West Point about politics and what we think." And he said, "I'm running for office down here for Republican committee person." And I said, "I got some leave to cure, I'll come down and help you out." and I got a little sign that said Iraq War Veteran for Rooney. I sat on Military Boulevard in Palm Beach County. We worked it. Tom Rooney lost that first race. Now, Tom Rooney lost his first race partially because he went up against a guy named Kevin Justice. Who's going to vote against Justice? Nobody's going to vote against. So I said, Rooney, you got to pick your fights better than this. So make sure when you do get engaged, it's a fight that you can win, okay? And be smart about it. But when I ran for the U.S. Congress, the first time I ever ran for a race, he called me up and said, listen, I know you're running, we talked about this, when can I come up and help you out? And a Republican U.S. Congressman door knocked in Bucks County, Pennsylvania for his Army buddy. Now, he wasn't a congressman at that point. It wasn't until 2 years later in 2008. But we worked together on so many bills. I will also tell you that when he won, that's the year he won in 2008, and we had a new philosophy of what we were doing in Afghanistan. We tripled the number of troops in Afghanistan to smoke out Greta bin Laden. Tom Rooney and I did a joint press conference about where we thought we should be doing in Afghanistan to go after and refocus our efforts there. Not one newspaper picked it up. Not one. And I tell you that story because sometimes when you get along, that's not sexy. You know, shock and awe was sexy when we were kicking down doors in Baghdad and snatching and grabbing folks, as you all know. But when we were winning hearts and minds during the middle of the day, rebuilding schools, doing all the things that we had to do to win the war, to do what was necessary to help the Iraqis stand up as their own country, that's when all the TV cameras left. And the fourth estate, we all talk about the three branches of government, but it's really the fourth estate that has a big role to play in that. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm a contributor to MSNBC, and I'm doing a lot of stuff on trying to do what's necessary to shed a light on our generation of veterans. Because, as I said, we need your voice because people are counting on us in this room. You don't need me to tell you the numbers. I mean, 22 veterans a day committing suicide, an unemployment rate that's 25% higher than civilian population. It goes on and on, the delay in the VA. And again, I'm not disparaging anybody. There's a lot of people working really hard on it, but the fact is that you look at Washington, D.C. right now. The least amount of veterans are serving in Congress since before World War I, 21%. You look at the corporate community, the private sector, the least amount of CEOs with military experience since before World War I. You have a unique voice. And as I said, public service comes in a lot of different forms. I had a young guy named Brendan Flynn. Brendan Flynn was a Coast Guard Academy graduate. He played football, and he detached his retina. So although he graduated, it was a couple months before he was about to graduate and be commissioned. Because he detached his retina, that made him unqualified, or he couldn't get his commission in the Coast Guard. So he graduated, but then he couldn't serve. He wanted to get involved in politics. He was calling around the Joe Sestak's campaign and my campaign, basically saying, what do I do? I said, come to Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I will make you my veterans coordinator. I need you now. Joe Sestak's going to win by 10 points. His opponent just got raided by the FBI. I'm in a dogfight. Okay? And so I told him. And he goes, well, and I, because someone said, there's a guy who might join. I said, give me his number. I'm going to call him. So I said. He came to work for me, and then he rose through the ranks, and became my head military legislative assistant in Washington. He's now going to get his law degree at night at Catholic Law School, and then he works in leadership through his coalition. So General Petraeus did an op-ed, I think this morning, on that about the need for America to be engaged in a world where you can't become isolationist. Doesn't mean exactly they should get involved in a civil war in Syria, but that's a different topic of conversation. The second thing I want to mention is if you have the desire to serve, then do it. Don't make excuses. Don't say, well, I really want to do this, but my colleagues from wherever are going to make more money than private are doing this. If this is what you want to do, then do it. Do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You lose a race? Okay, you fought to make a difference. You know, a lot of folks said to me, and before I went around, I asked a lot of people before I ran for Congress, and my I don't come from a political family. I had no money. I had $322 in my bank account when I declared for the U.S. Congress, literally. Okay? I'm still paying my college and law school loans off. I'm 39. And, you know, my dad was a Philly cop. My mom was a secretary. She used to be a nun. Luckily for me, she'd have to comment, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But a lot of folks said, Patrick, you should run for state rep, you should run for state senate. And that was the textbook advice. And again, I'm not arguing that that was bad advice. It was just that in my heart was telling me, run for Congress. I felt very passionate about the Iraq War. I had lost 19 men. I loved the military. I just thought we should have been focused on Bin Laden and all this other, you know. It's where I felt, and that's how I'm going to do it. Now, I will tell you that when people give you advice, even if you don't believe in it, just be respectful. I have a young guy back there, Danny Slicer. He's in the back. He's a student here at GW. He's in Army ROTC. His dad is active in politics in Philadelphia, and I went to see his dad. His dad was one of those guys that said, Patrick, you have a great resume, you know, taught at West Point, Bronze Star, but no one knows who you are. And he goes, how much money do you have? I go, I have a couple $100s. And he said, it takes millions. Don't do this. And I listened. But luckily, I did what I did, and I won by 0.6%. That tells me if you decide to do it to win. Pick a race that you can win, and embrace the suck. We all know what embrace the suck means, okay? If you need bullets to win in a fight, you save your bullets to the end, and that's money. You know, a lot of folks say, well, why don't you have more lawn signs? Why don't you have cool bumper stickers and t-shirts? And I said, because it costs money. And they keep telling me, people don't look at bumper stickers. They look at the television commercial. I wouldn't lose them. And I listened. You know, you cannot be the chief strategist, the campaign manager, and the candidate wrapped up in one. It's your show, it's your vision, but you have to delegate. Now, you know, I happened to be an officer, but I also knew that I wasn't trying to be the first sergeant. Okay, I empowered my people to succeed, and I supported them. I empowered my campaign team to succeed, and I supported them. And I did what I had to do as a candidate to win, to fight for the values that I believed in. And a lot of military candidates that I've seen throughout the years and that I've counseled have a really hard time letting go. They want to micromanage, they will look at every press release, and they want to do the first draft of it. You should be on the phones working and raising money. Because you have to reach people, you have to inspire them to vote for you and to be with you. So I want to say that second part. The third part is that, and I touched on it earlier, public service comes in a lot of different forms. You heard me earlier talk about Brendan Flynn, the Coast Guard Academy graduate. He's doing great things. Did great things for me, he's doing great things still for our country. Well, one of my gunners in Iraq was a guy by the name of Juan Arevalo. His nickname was RV. RV was from Texas, never knew his father, mother. His mother barely speaks any English. She's a small business owner, she's a hairdresser. RV was a private first class with the 82nd Airborne Division in my bolt team that I led. And and I still think this is funny to this day, he was bragging how he's the richest man in Baghdad in 2003, 2004. He was making $16,000 a year. But he used to say, I joined the Army, I didn't know you got paid. I thought they just trained you and gave you uniforms and fed you. So not only am I making 16 grand a year, but it is tax-free. I am the man. I am the man. RV went on to go graduate college when we got out, got his master's degree on the GI Bill, and is now a Texas State Trooper. I keep telling RV, you're going to be the first Hispanic president of the United States, unless someone beat you to the punch, the Castro brothers or whatever there. You know, I said, but you're the man. But again, whether he's a candidate or he's just helping the team, it's important for you in this room and for other folks out there to believe that we can do this, and we have to be there for each other, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I think that I got an amen. I think that's what that was. And I want to tell you the last part. Another guy who I served with is named Kobe Langley. Kobe and I served in Iraq together. He's a great guy. He now leads what's called the National Corporation for Public Service. So AmeriCorps, he's the head umbrella group and helps run recruit military families. if you care about politics, if you want to get in, make sure it's for the right reasons. I happen to be a devout Catholic, and I'm not here to, talk about Jesus Christ, but it's what I believe. But the Bible teaches me, which I think applies to politics, is to have a servant's heart. You have to be in this for the right reasons, because people will see right through you. If you're doing this to get your name in a paper, if you're doing this to be on TV, if you're doing those moments are so fleeting, it is not worth it. But if what motivates you is helping people and making a difference and fighting for policies that you know will help people that you grew up with or that you deal with or that you know, then get after it and do it. And just leave it all out in the field. And that's the last thing I'll say. A lot of folks say, geez, Patrick, you won your first race by 0.6%. I won by 1,518 votes of the 250,000 votes that were cast. I beat an incumbent, which means you have about a 2% chance to win. I was outspent by $3 million. That gives you about a 0.3% chance to win. Okay? And I won. And one of the first votes happened to be the Iraq vote. I worked with then Senator Barack Obama on the Iraq de-escalation bill, which is a timeline in Iraq, leaving a strategic strike force. And it passed the House and Senate, and then President Bush vetoed it. And then a blank check bill came up. And I'm not here to debate the Iraq war, but I'm here to say, I get to Congress, I literally won the closest race in the country. Second Democrat in over 200 years to represent Bucks County, Pennsylvania as a Democrat in U.S. Congress. And in that hot button issue, I gave the closing argument and passed this bill that was vetoed by the president. And then a blank check bill came up, which is basically like, we're going to do Iraq, we're not going to have any timelines, we're not going to have anything attached to it. And a lot of my consultants who are really bright people with gray hair and they've been around, they did the whole come to Jesus moment. Congressman said, Patrick, but they didn't go in, they said, Congressman, you got to vote for this bill. You've only been here for 3 months, but it's going to pass. And if you don't vote for this, you're going to lose your re-election. We know you don't want to do it. You got to hold your nose, you just got to do it. And I said, BS. And with all due respect, I said, I worked so hard to get here, and I campaigned a lot on the Iraq war issue. I said, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to do it. And I know people on the Democratic Party, they would have been fine with me. They would have known. They would have said, well, he's had a tough election, barely won, all that. But I would have known. I would have known. And you have to have a pure heart in this business. Because people out in America see right through the bullshit that's happening in Washington. That's why they have a 19% approval rating. You have to have a pure heart. You have to do what's right. Because at the end of the day, Judgment Day is more important than Election Day. After that 06 win, my re-election in 2008, I won by 15 points, 55,000 votes. I beat a Marine Colonel who had over $1 million in private wealth, raised a lot of money. And I still won. Now, my second term, I did vote, and I led the fight to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. A lot of folks said, how's this guy who's a combat veteran, devout Catholic, wife and 2 kids at home, why are you leading the fight to do this? You are just, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be Congress. And I said, well, that's another reason what's wrong with Congress. We all know, in my opinion, on the voting, I'm not here to debate the merits of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And this is nonpartisan. There's people who are going to disagree with it. I get it. But to me, I saw great leaders get thrown out of the military just because they happened to be gay. When I went to Air Assault School with the 101st Airborne Division, the guy I went through, I had no idea he was gay. I used to talk about, I used to talk about, I guess I didn't pick up that he didn't talk about it as much as I did. I'm going out, I'm talking about who I'm going to try to hook up with. He leaves to go to Germany in a common arms unit and then basically comes out 3 months later and gets thrown out of the military. Not for any misconduct, but just because he was gay. You all know 13,000 folks get kicked out. It cost the American taxpayer $1.2 billion because it costs about $60,000 to train on average, these young Americans up into their MOS. And I supported that bill because, and I had the first hearing in 16 years, and we rallied and we passed it. Because I saw that it was not going to go anywhere in House of Representatives or the Senate unless we really, really pushed it and put our shoulder into it. And I was willing to do it because I believed in it. And all I would say to you is that, you know, I lost my election. Some folks said I was for the reason, or you know, maybe it was the healthcare vote, whatever it is. Yeah, me and 63 other folks lost our elections in 2010. But at the end of the day, I tried to do something. We got stuff done. And I know that I'm proud about that. And it wasn't easy. You know, my wife, I was joking earlier, my wife is Republican. So I'm a Democrat, so I have a mixed marriage, okay? And we have two little kids, Maggie Murphy's 6 and Jack is 3. But I remember when it was 3 years ago, and you know, we had death threats and things that were not very cool and did not make it very easy. And I remember on Sunday morning before we went to church, my wife said, "Do you think this is worth it? Do you think this is all worth it?" And I said, "Babe, I ask the same thing sometimes." I said, and I told her the story, I'm going to share it with you. I said, "I got an email, babe, before I left Washington yesterday from a company commander in Kabul, Afghanistan." And I said, "Babe, he wrote, you can only write to your congressman if they had the zip code." And he basically said, "I wrote this email, I had to lie to say I lived in a zip code in Bucks County." He said, "But," he goes, I want you to know," he goes, "I'm on my 4th deployment here in Afghanistan." He said, "I love the military. I love the men and women that I get a chance to lead as company commander." He said, "As you know, sir, the worst thing in the world is when you get one of those Dear John or Dear Jane letters in the mail. And as you know, as soon as that happens, because their suicide rate's so high, we march them into the chaplain's office. We have their battle buddy with them. If we can, if there's a way we can shake it out, that we'll send them home as possible." He said, "But Patrick, never in a million years I think I get one of those letters. But the person that I love the most said he's not going to be there when I come home. And it's breaking my heart." And he said, "Unlike so many of the other soldiers that I counsel myself, I can't go to a battle buddy. I can't go to a chaplain. I, of course, I can't go to my commander because I happen to be gay." So I'm sitting here. I'm holding my 9mm weapon. It's 3 o'clock in the morning here in Kabul. And the only thing that's keeping me from blowing my brains out is this guy, Patrick Murphy, who's an Iraq War veteran that I just read about in the Star and Stripes military newspaper. He said, "Sir, please just keep fighting, because there's so many people that are counting on me." That is what it is about, what it should be about. You should care about the country more than an election. You should care about making a difference, because that's why you do this. That's why you go to these receptions. That's why you run for office. That's why you work your tail off for other candidates. Campaigns are the closest thing, and I don't say this, I can say this in this room, and hopefully you don't boo me. Campaigns are so similar, in my mind, to combat, because you are so mission focused. You are working 20 hours a day in campaigns, just like in the military. Now, granted, you don't get shot at or mortared, on campaigns, although my first race, my opponent's father pulled a knife on my workers, which was really cool. The papers didn't cover it, which was also really cool. It was like, really? You're not going to cover it? That's like kind of a big deal. So I wrote a book about it and told about it in the book. But at the end of the day, surround yourself with good people. Do what you think is right. Work your tail off. And let the chips fall where they may. So thanks so much. I'd be honored to answer. Can I do some question and answer? Is that okay? That'd be great. Yeah.
so if anyone has a question, please raise your hand, and I'll give you the mic. First question. I know somebody had a question back there, so Jason, thank God. All right.
Absolutely. So, as you may know, our Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Scott Gould, recently stepped down after 4 years as Service Department of Veterans Affairs. Heard a number of people mention your name as someone that would be a great replacement. Is that a job that you would like? Is that something that you would undertake as the Deputy Secretary of Veterans Affairs?
You should disclose where you work.
Yeah. He wants to know. Well, if I would have the opportunity to serve and I was offered that job, I'll give you a promotion right away if you might. So I've not got a call from the White House on that position. I mean, I know what the VA does. Everyone wants to kick the shit out of them right now, and I get it. Like, it breaks my heart. But like at the end of the day, it's like, well, what are you doing to be part? We can all point to problems and challenges, but like, what are you doing for the solution? Those folks like Tommy Sowers and almost everybody over there are doing the Lord's work, in my opinion. Now there's some dead wood and some folks that need to, listen, I'll never forget. I mean, it took an act of Congress to fire a federal employee. I had to fire a federal employee once as an Army captain, and it was not easy, but it was the right thing to do. And the captains before I was in that position wanted to do it, and they wrote counseling statements after counseling statements, but they never did anything. And I was like, well, why are we doing it? Like, and they were like, really? You're gonna upset people? I'm like, well, if they're not doing their job and they're not showing up for work, like, you have a responsibility to the American taxpayer. And I, sometimes you gotta kick ass and take names. So, but thank you for that question. And I'm not gonna answer it any further than that. So,
Justin. Hey, I just want to say thanks a lot for the ADT repeal. I wrote a op-ed in the New York Daily News about 3 days before it went, and I just want to thank you personally. I've seen you do a lot on it. I had a question about what you said about the politicians and the BS and this quest for over 10 years. I think a lot of us maybe work in the federal workforce or see, this M1A1 upgrade on the tank that we don't want, but Congress says we need. I'm just curious. These guys get elected. You and other people that I see, every time I hear, Mike McIntyre or whoever it is that you've ever interfaced with, this is all good and everything's good. I just don't get how they go up there and they've got staff that are probably pretty good, congressmen or senators that are pretty good, many of them, but then we get this result and outcome that I think just ties the hands of bureaucracy or makes the everybody on the outside look in. I mean, you and Rooney, for example.
And that was public. Rooney and I were public at the time too. I mean, and it was Justin, you said, right?
Yes.
Justin, two things. One, you're all smart in this room. So remember the country. Only 25% get to go to college. You're here in graduate, mostly in graduate level. So follow the money. I will never forget. It was the Joint Strike Fighter, 2-engine issue, and I was like, listen. The Army's saying they don't need 2 engines. I know they're saying they tie the job and stuff like that, but I'm like, it's wrong. And listen, I was a Blue Dog Democrat, so I was a co-sponsor of the balanced Constitution for a balanced budget amendment, amend the Constitution for that. And I'm like, I can't argue for 2 different engines, 2 different factors, and the military said they don't need it, so I voted against it. Now I had the small subcontractor in my district that lobbied me before the vote, and it's going to cost us 12 jobs, and you got to, yada, yada, yada. And I listened to them. I listened to both sides. I voted against it. The very next day, 3 of the top 4 executives of that small military contractor in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, double maxed my opponent. Because they said, don't do it, don't do it. And I thought I did what was right for the country. But I say that not because I'm this great wonderful thing. That is the common bond that we all have. It's called selfless service. We take these values for granted. I mean, the mnemonic leadership, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal sacrifice. That is what it takes to be a great leader. Abraham Lincoln once said, leadership isn't taking people where they want to be, it's taking them where they ought to be. Our Congress ought to listen to the military experts. So I understand the Bradley fighting vehicle, I get it. In York County, Pennsylvania, I have relatives in York County. That's where a lot of that is made. And there's cameras here. I will tell you that that is crap. We should not be doing that. We should listen to the military. Listen, we have a great country because if you look on the outside, the reason why, because our values and freedoms and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, the two big reasons why we have a great country, and again, I talk constitutional law, so it's the Constitution and, you know, equality, and yeah, that's what makes us America. But what makes us a great country is we have the strongest military in the world and the strongest economy in the world. But you listen to the military experts, like Admiral Mike Mullen, who says the greatest threat to America is our national debt. And I understand that's not sexy. I understand it doesn't win campaigns. I get it. But I give a shit that Maggie Murphy, who's 6, owes $44,000 for national debt. And a little brother Jack, the same thing. And I tried to do something about it when I was there. Passing bills with Tom Rooney and others. They pay down the wasteful spending. And I have proven tens of billions of dollars we help save. But frankly, it's a drop in a bucket compared to what we need to be doing. So, but follow your money is the primacy and recency. What I told you and how I close.
Eric's right. You mentioned earlier that $320-something in your bank account when you decided to run.
Yep.
You know, most people will tell you one of the first questions you need to ask yourself when you decide to run for public office is, can you afford to win and can you afford to lose? How did you make that decision then? How did you make it happen with $320? You paid the bills? That's what a lot of people ask.
Yeah, I mean, I had a job at a law firm, and I just got it, so I got my first paycheck. But I told them when I was interviewing, I'm like, there's a good chance I'm going to run for Congress. And I got the job, I'm like, I'm going for Congress. Like, you know, so. But there was a time in that first campaign when the CEO of this law firm called me in and said, you know, we're on the hours. When this campaign's over, we're going to let you go. And I was like, I better win this race. You know, that was not easy. And my wife was pregnant with her first child at the time, and you know, it was a lot of stuff. But I will tell you that I did listen to great people, like Danny Slicer's dad back there, who basically said, don't do this race. And he'll tell you, like he says it publicly, like, I told Murphy not to do it, that guy didn't listen to me. But he also said, but if you do this, hire a finance person, because that's the hardest nut to crack. Don't hire a campaign manager, don't hire, you know, it's like, you gotta raise money, you can't spend it.
You get one of those for $320?
No. I will tell you 2 quick stories. And I wrote a book about it, and I was pretty, you know, I'm honest. I fired 2 campaign managers in my first campaign. I went through, the third person stuck, and he went on to go do great things, and he was with me, became my chief of staff. And then, by the way, after I won my first race, everyone was like, you shouldn't hire your campaign manager as your chief of staff. It should be someone with Hill experience. And I was like, I believe in loyalty. I believe in the saying, loyalty above all else except honor. I mean, the guy was incompetent or something. I wouldn't, but this guy helped us run a great race. And I believed in him, and I believed what we could do together. And then he went on to run Rahm Emanuel's mayor's race. Bill Foster helped with Bill Foster's race. Bill Foster's a congressman. He interned in my office. And I heard Denny Hassler was going to be leaving. He was going to retire, the former speaker. I said, Bill, you have like $1 million in your bank. Like, you should go back and move home and run for Congress. He said, really? I said, yeah, talk to him. Like, you should really think about doing it. He did it and won. So then I would tell these young college interns, like, if you want to be a congressman or congresswoman, you intern in our office and you become one. It just happens like that, you know? But the advice that I got was that hire a finance person and devote 8 hours a day. Go to morning train stations and morning meetings. From 9 to 5, you're on the phones, which is degrading. You become a telemarketer and you're marketing yourself, and it's not what you're used to doing in the military. But if that's what it takes to win, I was willing to do it. Because I lost 19 men in my unit, and I was damned if we were going to lose more, in my opinion, in an unnecessary war. So, but after my primary was over, even my finance director, I fired that person. There were some issues. And I don't like firing people. I talked a lot about firing people. If you look at the numbers of people who worked on my campaign, like people who worked in my congressional office stayed with me throughout the year to take promotions in other offices and stuff like that because we had a team. But you know, they had to be a team. But I will tell you that in that second quarter, we had an event at the Happy Rooster in 2005. And it was a bar at 16th and Chestnut, a young professionals event. And I'm like trying to tap into like the lawyer money in Philadelphia and all this stuff, like young professional stuff. And after the event was alright, I thought it was, I was like, hey, it was good, I know it was our last event. I said, how did you guys, how did you think it went? I thought, and it was my campaign manager and my finance director. And they said, well, it's gonna help us make payroll, so it was a good event. I was like, really? Make payroll, huh? That's what you care about? I didn't say that, that's in my head. Like, and I was like, I'm following that away. You gotta have people on your team that necessarily doesn't that work hard as you, because no one's gonna want it more than you. Or no one should want it more than you, by the way. But at the end of the day, they gotta be willing to do all it takes to win. And if they weren't willing to do it. So my first campaign manager was on a volunteer basis. I said, I can't pay you, but if you do a great job, because I could only afford a finance director, I could only hire one staff, and then we had some college interns for free. And I said, you do a good job. I declared in May, I said by September, October, maybe, if we raise enough money, but you gotta earn it. After the first 4 weeks, he's doing a pretty good job, but 4 weeks came back in and he's like, hey, listen, I'm not gonna do this anymore unless you pay me. I said, well, thanks for your 4 weeks of service. And that's all I said. I was like, it was BS. He was holding me up right before they ended my quarter. And I'm like, I told you what it was. Like, if I wasn't straight with him, I would have felt guilty. But I was like, I told you how this was going to work. This is not like Friends of Patrick Murphy Employment Agency. This is like a congressional campaign in a race that we had no business winning. And I was there to win. And he obviously didn't get the memo, or wasn't listening.
Patrick?
Yep.
A lot of veterans seem to have a lot of trouble raising money. You're talking about that.
Yep.
We just don't have to do it. What advice would you give to a first-time veteran candidate trying to get over the hurdle of asking someone for money?
Did you all hear that in the back? It was what do you get over about asking people for money? One, say to yourself, because that's what I had to remind myself, I was not asking money for me, it was for the campaign. So I never took a salary from the campaign. So I was a little luckier that I did have a law firm job on the side and other stuff, but it's not always the case. As you know, you can pay yourself about $60,000 a year via campaign funds, but that's tricky politically and else, but you can do it. But I would say, like, one, you have to put your ego aside. You have to make an ask. If you're calling people to have a conversation, do it on the weekend. You're there to raise money. And again, you know, sometimes you don't make asks, you have to build a rapport, but like at the end of the day, like, there's gotta be an agenda and you gotta stick to it. And I'm a big metrics guy. I did how many calls did I make today? What did we raise? What's your commitments? What's it like? We followed up that day. We sent emails, faxes, and like we had an operation going. But I will tell you, it's easy. Like the best part of the job is like giving speeches. I love doing this stuff. I could just, but like that's not what I'm not running for anything right now, so it gives me a little more latitude. But you want to go give speeches. You want to say, oh yeah, I'll go and I'll speak here and I'll speak there. But at the end of the day, if you're not making your numbers, and if that's the crunch time before the end of the quarter stuff, I mean, you got to do what's necessary to win. And you got to say, listen, I know you could, you can give, what's $2,600 a year now, right? So you can give $5,200 to my campaign. I'm not asking for that, that's a lot of money, but if you could do 1,000 of that, that would be huge. You know, I mean, like, I need you now. I don't need you a year from, I need you now. And you gotta be, you know, I know, and you know, it's crazy, but it's about listening to people. Like, people ask why Bill Clinton's a great, you know, why do women love Bill Clinton? Why do guys love Bill Clinton? Like, you know, because he listens. He has empathy. Like, you know, I feel your pain. Like, you know, he's the man. And he supported my opponent for AG. Like, I lost because of Bill Clinton in my last race, you know? Because I was for Barack Obama, not his wife. But at the end of the day, like, you gotta listen. Like, I would say, if it's someone who had like a public, you know, LinkedIn or whatever, where they go to college, where they go to graduate school, whatever, because then I would say, oh, you know, whatever the small talk was, and try and build that. If I didn't call someone up, like, Patrick Murphy, you have $1,000. Like, that's not like, someone called me up, I'd be like, who are you? Like, no, like, stop calling me. But I literally had to call some people 20 times before they called me back. But I would call them. And I would leave a different message every time. Hey, this is Patrick Murphy. I'm having some phone issues. I don't know if you got my last 3 messages, but like, would really hope you call me back because I know you're a big Democrat like me and we can win this race. Here's my number. call me. That's what you got to do. It's really glamorous, getting a Bronze Star in Iraq and teaching at West Point, doing this great stuff, and then like begging for money. But I wasn't begging. Like I was there to win.
Rob, you have a question? Josh back. Go ahead.
Well, you got to follow your heart too. You got to follow your head and your heart. So for me, I was the driving force. I didn't always say, I wasn't even a political science major, so I wasn't saying I'm running this as my timeline, but I knew like that's what I wanted to do, so that's why I did it. But I will tell you that, like, listen, it's not rocket science neither. It's like, if you're Republican, who gives money to Republicans? If you're Democrat, who gives money to the Democrats? Why did they give it? Okay, the unions. Okay, where am I on the Employee Free Choice Act? Where am I on minimum wage? If it's the trial attorneys, where am I on tort reform? Okay, if it, like, the Jewish community, where am I on Israel? Like, okay, Republicans, where am I on, the balanced budget amendment? Where am I on the life issue? Like, it's not rocket science. And so if you call them and just say, well, I know you give money to the Republicans, like, figure out, listen to what they care about, and if you agree, then tell them why you're going to fight for them and your shared values. If you don't, but you got to do your homework before you make that call. And then it's repetition. But part of it, though, is getting a list and some other things. My first finance director, he had a list. So that was part of the deal. He had a good list, and I called him because of that. And one of the reasons why I hired him. And it helped. All right, I'm getting the axe.
We've got about 10 more minutes.
Okay.
So we want to have a drink and mingle for 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
I want to say thank you very much for being here.
Hey, thanks, one last thing, and I genuinely mean this. If you're thinking about running, it's not right. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a law firm in Philadelphia called Fox Rothschild. So my email is pmurphy@foxrothschild.com. It comes to me. It doesn't come to someone else. If you're thinking about running, whether you're Democrat or Republican, let me know. Whether it's now or down the line, and I'll do all I can to be helpful. I mean, I don't just say, you need more veterans to run, and then I go on to the next thing. I have devoted a large chunk of my time to this because I believe that we need more veterans. And I know it's not easy, but I wish someone told me the things I told you tonight, because frankly, I didn't learn the hard way and still managed to make it out on top. So, God bless you all for your service. Thank you very much.